What's up, y'all? One Piece, One Life here, and guys, have y'all noticed? Luffy be in prison a lot. I mean, for someone heralded as the warrior of liberation, the person who's going to free all of us and all the oppressed people of the One Piece world, you would think that he would manage to stay out of trouble more often. And by trouble, I do mean, evading capture. But no, there's actually a surprising amount of times that he's either captured, in jail, or in some other way incapacitated. That word. And since I find that hilarious, that's what we're going to talk about today. So this is going to be all the times that Luffy and the Straw Hats got captured. The reason I'm adding in the Straw Hats is because even if I was just including Luffy, that wouldn't make for a very interesting video. So I was like, well, why not just add to the list of characters by adding in the Straw Hats and Straw Hat allies. But before we get into it, guys, please, y'all know the drill. Like the video, subscribe to the page for more One Piece content just like this, and share it around with all your friends who love One Piece. Let's get it going. So I figured that the best way to actually go through this was to go through the story arc by arc. And in doing so, you actually see Romance Dawn is fairly void of anything. At least as far as we know, Luffy's backstory with Shanks and all didn't really have anything, unless you want to count when Luffy was captured by Higuma, which I guess, but I'm not really going to count that. So the first time we really see a Straw Hat being tied up or captured is Zoro in Shell's Town. You know, when we first meet Zoro ever, strewn up like, Jesus Christ. God, please don't strike me down, I'm sorry. Continuing on in the East Blue, you have that one time that Luffy was caught in Buggy's cage, and I think he tried to eat the bars or something. And then, there isn't that much in Syrup Village, but if you wanted to be special, you could include the Zoro climbing out of the well scene from the One Piece live action, but we're not gonna do that. Moving on from there, I guess if we have to count Higuma's, we also have to count Don Krieg's net that he briefly throws over Luffy. I mean, can we just talk about how useless Don Krieg was for a moment? What did he think a net was gonna do when they were big enough for somebody to put their hands through? Then we get on to Arlong Park, and from here on, guys, I think first I'm gonna just define something really quick. At least originally, I was intending for this video to solely be physically restrained or put in a place of imprisonment. But then, starting with Nami, and as we'll see on a lot more people, I got to thinking, well, a lot of this could be psychological imprisonment as well. Blackmail, or feeling manipulated, or being placed in a situation where they feel like they can't get out. So because of that, I think I'm going to include it. And therefore, the first instance of that type of imprisonment was with Nami, where Nami really wanted to be free from Arlong and the Arlong pirates, or fishermen pirates, or whatever they're called. But, she was indebted to Kokoyashi Village. She needed to free them, so she couldn't leave just like that. Though that does remind me that Arlong also literally did keep her in chains while drawing the maps, so I guess there's that too. And then for a bit of levity in the Fishman Island arc, there was that time when Luffy was caught in the stone because he planted his feet to use Gum Gum Pinwheel, but then couldn't get out. And then as the Straw Hats make their pit stop to Logtown on their way to the Grand Line, Luffy gets captured again and is literally about to die. And he's captured of Buggy by all people. But then of course, that stroke of luck came and saved him. Or if you're of that opinion, it was Dragon. So moving on to the Grand Line, I gotta ask you guys, do you guys count Laboon as a form of capture? Because the Straw Hats were technically stuck in a place, at least temporarily. But I don't know how to count this one because I'm not exactly sure that the intention was for Crocus and Laboon to actually keep them. So I'll let you guys decide. As far as I could tell, I couldn't really pick up on any in Whiskey Peak, which brings us on to Lil Garden. And of course, in Lil Garden, I'd be remiss if I didn't say the amazing scene with Zoro, Nami, and Vivi getting caught in Mr. Three's wax candelabra. You know the scene. The scene where Zoro is literally about to cut off his legs to get out. And then when he stopped, he says, well, if I'm about to die, this is the pose I want to die in. Again, couldn't find really anything significant in Drum Kingdom. But then you get to Alabasta. Now in Alabasta, a fair part of the arc was dedicated to the whole Rain Dinners plotline. So here you had literally all the Straw Hats except for Sanji and Chopper being captured in Crocodile's basement, filling quickly with water and banana gators. And listen, all I'm saying is, if my favorite character wasn't there to be the MVP as he usually is, who knows what could happen. As we move on from Alabasta, there was nothing really in Jaya, and then you get to Skypiea. And apparently the trend of Luffy being eaten by animals is going to continue, because you have that time that Luffy was eaten by Nola the snake. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to probably just say that, this was just Oda stalling because he needed to have Luffy out of the picture while the rest of everyone else was destroyed, so that when Luffy came back, he and Eno could be the final fight. So it was basically a plot device. But Luffy's also an idiot. But again, here guys, I'm going to let you guys decide whether you count this as being captured or not. But you know what's definitely not up for debate about being incapacitated? Yes, said the word right. It's Aokiji's freezing. At the end of the Long Ring Longland arc, when Aokiji pulled up on the crew and instantly froze the monster trio and Robin, trust me, that was definitely a form of capture. He just didn't follow through and actually capture them, but they were instantly taken out of any form of fighting or escaping, really. And this starts the train that we'll be on for the next several arcs, where we just see a continuous trend of Robin being the one in particular getting captured. Because in Water 7 and then the Sea Train mini arc, you have Robin and also Frankie being captured obviously by CP9. I mean, y'all remember the Sea Train, right? Was there not to love? The introduction of Sogeking, the introduction of Wanze, Sanji being the MVP yet again, or Frankie battles Centaur. Then we get to Enies Lobby, and obviously the entirety of the Enies Lobby saga just has to do with Robin's various forms of imprisonment. And with Robin, it's twofold, because you have both the psychological aspect as well as the physical aspect. I mean, physically, she is in chains. She has the Sea Stone cuffs on, so she can't use her Devil Fruit powers, and the entire reason why the Straw Hats fought CP9 is because they each had a different key, and they needed the different keys to figure out which one unlocked her cuffs. But also psychologically, Robin wanted to be captured. She wanted to be put away, tucked away in some other corner, as long as it meant that the Straw Hats could escape. Well, at least Luffy did come and free her of both of those thoughts. In one of the greatest moments I've seen in One Piece to date, I want to live. Maybe I'll do a greatest moments for me in One Piece. I probably will, later though. Moving right along, as we dash out and head into the Florian Triangle, we meet Brook. Now this one's interesting because it could be argued to be captured or not, depending on what your exact definition of capture is. Here I'm talking about Moria stealing Brook, and by extension, everybody else's shadows on Thriller Bark. Because see, here's the thing. Brook could still leave if he wanted to. The consequences of that would just be him dying because he doesn't have a shadow when he hits sunlight. So technically, he was still free to leave, but because obviously the implications of that, it could be viewed as a form of capture. Also in Thriller Bark, you have the moment where Chopper, Nami, and Usopp are captured in some coffins and being transported. But after Thriller Bark, we're gonna go through all the way to the end of Sabaody, where Kuma splits up the crew. Because after getting split up, Brook is actually sent to Namakura Island, where he is technically captured because they think that he's some kind of demon devil that they've been worshipping this entire time. You also have Robin being sent to Tequila Wolf and being put to as a slave to work there before obviously being busted out of the Revolutionary Army. Which, side note, Oda is crazy for that. I mean, imagine having a whole arc where the whole thing is, I just want to be free to live my life the way I want. I finally found friends who I can do that with. Just for what? Max a month later to be separated from said friends and then put to be a slave? Nah, after Enies Lobby, he said, Robin who? And then of course you have Amazon Lily, where Luffy was captured by the Kuja tribe. You know, the scene where they see his family jewels. Continuing on in the Paramount War saga, you have the entirety of Impel Down. Because yes, while none of the Straw Hats were technically captured in Impel Down, I'd be remiss if I didn't count the literal prison of the One Piece world in the prison video. And if you want to have foresight in there, then you could also say that Jinbei, who would become a Straw Hat, was also captured in there, as well as Ace. Now you go through the actual Marineford War, and I guess count Ace if you want to, I'm not really going to talk about it, mostly because he's dead, so it doesn't matter. But then post time skip, we come back and we head down to Fishman Island, where in the Ryugu Palace, Zoro, Usopp, and Brook are captured. And as the water rises in the room, Brook uses his soul extending to scope the area out. I'm not gonna lie, it's been a long time since I've seen the Fishman Island arc in any form, but I do remember that this moment was hilarious. Moving on to Punk Hazard, you have Luffy's group being caught in Caesar's cage. Also in Punk Hazard, this is one where you can take it or leave it if you want to count it. I'm gonna lean towards not counting it, but I'll let you guys decide, which is Law's body swapping of the Straw Hats. And the reason I'm even bringing it up is because, yes, you're still free to move, you're still able to go wherever you want, you're not physically restrained, but you are in a body foreign to your own. You're limited by what you know about the other person. So in a way, this could be a form of incapacitation. You know what's definitely a form of capture and incapacitation though? Being turned into a toy slave. Cause yes, next we're talking about when Robin and maybe like 1,000 other people were transformed into toy slaves by Sugar's Hobby no Mi. You know, and then the legendary moment of Usopp saying, "I'll become your brave hero," and then indeed becoming that. That moment is what heralded him as God Usopp, which just goes to show Luffy isn't the only member of his crew out here freeing people. During the Dressrosa arc, you also have that brief moment for a few chapters, I think, where Law is cuffed up. And then we move on from Dressrosa, skip over Zoe because it gets into what we really want to talk about, Whole Cake. And here, of course, how can we not talk about Sanji? During the entirety of Whole Cake, kind of like Robin, Sanji is both psychologically and physically imprisoned. Physically, he had on those kind of bomb cuffs that were supposed to explode if Sanji tried to escape, even though Reiju did switch them out of the kindness of her heart, not wanting to see her brother die. But still, the intention was capture. And then on the more psychological aspect, not only do you have Sanji feeling a debt to his family, that even though he doesn't like them, he just can't let them go out like this. But on top of that, you have the blackmail of Zeph, his actual father figure, and then threatening that if you don't do this, you'll die. Oh, and add on the blackmail of threatening the Straw Hat Pirates, where they said they'll hunt them down too. My favorite character was going through a lot, okay? Don't judge him off that time that he attacked Luffy. It didn't happen. Then we also see in his backstory, he was literally captured by his own father, put in prison with an iron helmet on, begging to get out. I don't care what anybody says. That's tragic. Is it as tragic as Kuma? No, but nothing's as tragic as Kuma. And don't worry about Kuma, we're getting there. Finally, for Whole Cake Island, we also have the fact that Luffy and Nami were captured in Montdoor's book. People remember that scene for multiple reasons. Those of us who are sane remembers it for Oda showing us the full extent of Luffy's stretching, where after a certain limit he will literally start to tear, something that was addressed in an SBS a while back. For those of us who are insane, remember it for Toei's adaptation of Nami. Then as we move on to Wano country, we have Luffy and Kid being beaten and taken to the Udon prison, which to me is crazy how superpowered they are even without the strength of their devil fruit, because they are naturally super strong. They were just carrying those blocks like it wasn't a problem for them. And a lesser part of Act 1 of Wano that people may have forgotten is the whole Law being captured by Hawkins and then eventually let out by Drake. Then finally for Wano, we have, the whole thing with Yamato, where Yamato had the cuffs on from her father all this time before Luffy finally took them off. Which finally brings us to the current arc, Egghead Island. And even here we've seen some instances of capture, like Vegapunk being captured by York, which is hilarious to me only because how are you getting captured by yourself? And then I'd of course be remiss if I didn't bring up York following that being captured by the Straw Hats in, it's a hostage situation. Just because that panel is amazing. You have the Seraphins getting caught in bubbles, which I do think is gonna come back around and play a role later on. Those bubble guns, watch out for them. And then of course, we have Kuma's entire life. Kuma's family was quite literally taken by the Celestial Dragons to be slaves. Even after Kuma himself escaped, Jinny was then captured, or I guess I should say recaptured, made to have Bonnie, and then thrown out like wet trash. And then, after Ginny died, Kuma literally had to become essentially a slave to the Marines and the world government just in order to protect Bonnie through the ways of literally erasing his entire personality and becoming a warlord. Kuma's story is one of the most tragic, and it's literally a tale of, imprisonment, being shackled, being chained, which is why when Kuma and by extension Bonnie see Luffy in the Nika form and Luffy goes into that Joy Boy-esque form, you finally have the liberation that they've been waiting for their entire lives. And with the Giants coming in and saying that they also know the lore about Nika, it seems like Elbaf is gonna have some instances of this too. But that's all the times I can remember, at least, of the Straw Hats and their allies being captured. Have you found any more? There's a strong chance that I missed something because, I'm not going through the entire story all over again. So if I did, let me know in the comments. That's the end of the video, guys. Now, please, y'all already know what to do. Like the video, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content just like this, and share it around with all your friends who enjoy the series. Don't forget, I'm trying to make a community, but I need your help to do it. Well, that's gonna be all for me, guys. I'll catch y'all in the next one. And always remember, One Piece, one life. Now listen, I get it. Some may even say that it was purposeful planning for Oda to have his main character, whose entire theme is freedom and liberation, be captured so many times as a purposeful contrast. And that's all well and good, but did we really have to have him stuck between two buildings? Like really, how did that help anybody?